Oighreachd. Is there anybody awake in this room? Yeah. Josh, we're waiting for you. It's always good to have someone to call out first thing in the morning. Well, Matthew Macharden agus ha ma fécin talach olán here trot Matthew Chisahern agus It's always good to see a good haul first thing in the morning on a Saturday when we know that there's been good opportunity for socialising the night before, and that's all I'll say on that matter. But it is and always has been a big part of our conference that we have an opportunity to kind of relax a wee bit in the evening in between the 2 days. So just before we get going with our first session this morning, as always, there's a few housekeeping that I need to run through again, just in case anybody's here arrived, and just in case you've forgotten what Ailsa shared with us yesterday. And that's thanks again to our sponsors, without whom actually the conference would not be possible. We're a small organisation, and even with our members supporting us very well along the way, really without financial support, this would not be possible. And it certainly wouldn't be possible to allow us to do it in a venue like this. So many, many thanks to Highlands and Islands Enterprise, to Scottish Government, and the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who are the main sponsors for this event. Now, as yesterday, staff will be taking photos through the course of the morning. So if you really don't want to be in a photograph for whatever reason, please just speak to a member of staff. Members of staff are easily recognised by their orange lanyards. To differentiate between my pink one, don't ask me anything, because I know nothing except what I'm told and given in my notes. So, no planned fire alarms today, as yesterday. So if one does go off, please follow all the directions we are given. Fire exits rather, are well marked, but please take guidance from stewards and so on. There are SMO staff around, and they will be on the case, I'm sure. And just for that, can you please avoid leaving any bags or anything in the aisles so that there's no trip hazards, whether in an emergency or on the way to the loo. These things do happen, so if we can avoid them. So, keeping to the theme of this conference, our first session today is going to be channeling new income stream. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Ailsa, to introduce the panel for this session. This will be about an hour, and then we're moving on to the next.
That's great. Thanks very much, Agnes, and good morning again to everybody. This session is of particular interest to me. Most of you know I'm chair of the Isle of Egg Heritage Trust, and the number one thing I think about all the time is how are we going to pay the staff, how are we going to keep the lights on, how are we going to keep delivering really fantastic, impactful projects for our community. And as much as we don't like to think about it, all involves money. We need to be constantly on our toes thinking about how we best use our assets, how we optimise the resources that are available to us, and how we can work with partners and stakeholders to raise money to deliver our fantastic projects. And the two organisations we're going to hear from today are absolutely fantastic at this. Really inspiring in how they've used very, very different assets at Knoydart, which many of you know, but perhaps an organisation that's less familiar to you, Kirkcaldy, and they've been doing fantastic work over in Five over the last few years. So it's much better to hear from them as to what they've been doing. But again, I think they've got fantastic lessons for all of us that are either thinking about buying assets or already own them, as to how we can work together to make best use of those for our communities. So I'm going to invite Richard first from Knoydart. So many of you will know Knoydart, but perhaps I think you won't know everything that's been going on there, which is really inspiring. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Ailsa, and morning, everyone. So just to briefly introduce myself. So my name's Richard Williams. I stay in Ackleterbury in the North West Highlands, and know quite a few of you in this room through different hats over the years. But I'm as of last summer, I've been working with the Knoydart Foundation, managing the Knoydart Credit Project, which is all about exploring natural capital, which is part of the theme for this morning. I've also, in a sort of previous life, a previous employment, I was with Geomia Trust. I was on the board of the foundation for 5 years. So my talk and observations, if you like, are kind of based on those experiences. I'm very aware that there's quite a few people in the audience that know probably far more about this subject than I do. So please be gentle on me in the question session that follows. So yeah, it's a big, obviously a big subject. 26 years in September of community ownership for the foundation. So lots to cover. So I'll try and just sort of draw out a few key things as I see them, and sort of a few kind of learnings and reflections to take away. Right. There we go. So I'm just, going to give a little bit of context, talk briefly about core activities, and then really sort of major on the income generation side. So as I'm sure you all know, the foundation have been owners of the 7,000 hectare Knoydart estate since 1999. Over that time, the population has roughly doubled from about 60 people at the time of the buyout to around 110 people today. So core activities includes management of the estate, of the land. A lot of that is around deer management, woodland creation, which I'll come on to a bit more in a moment. Housing, so the foundation has a stock of housing that units that are rented to members of the local community. There's also house plots that are sold with rural housing burdens on, and that's for people to live and work locally. And then also at the moment there's a couple of housing development projects underway. One significantly which is about creating accommodation for workers. So it's always a bit of a sort of bottleneck of trying to run projects in remote locations with limited housing supply. Where are you going to house the people that are coming to do the work, be they construction workers, tree planters, hospitality workers, what have you. Linked to that, delivering services for the community, and this includes energy, the hydroelectric scheme that Knoydart Renewables run, there's a local shop, venison processing, firewood, and many other things, some of which I'll come on to in a bit more detail in a moment as well. And essentially, a lot of this activity is generating income to keep these activities going and to invest in the community's future. And I think really at the heart of a lot of this is the belief that community regeneration is essential to the regeneration of the land and vice versa. So I'm just going to now talk in a little bit more detail about 3 areas. So firstly, deer stalking. Which is one of the main activities across the wider estate, and income to support this is sort of from 3 main sources. So there's income from stalking guests, so people coming and paying to go and shoot stags and hinds at different times of the year. Sale of carcasses, and more recently processing carcasses. To provide a source of processed venison for the community. And that's just been going on in this building. So the green building, the white building in the front is the old sort of Victorian era, if you like, deer larder that's had various sort of upgrades over the years. And then the green building behind is a purpose-built processing unit. So the vast majority of carcasses that come off the foundation estate, which it varies a bit from year to year, but it might be sort of 200 to 250 carcasses a year, the majority are processed here and then sold locally through the shop. They're sold to local hospitality, to the pub and restaurants, and about 90% of that product stays locally. So it's, as a rough rule of thumb, if you're selling a carcass to a game dealer, you might expect to get £1.20 a kilo, sort of thing. If you can process that carcass yourself, or in this manner, and add value to it, you might expect to get 4 to 5 times that sort of across the beast as a whole. So it's a great way to add value to a product and also provide a service to the local community, and the best bit is that local residents get a healthy discount on the venison as well. Okay, so moving on to the ranger service, who essentially do a variety of things. There's a ranger team of 2 at the moment, and they offer sort of visitor experiences, so walking tours, Land Rover tours, bike hire, those sorts of things, and also manage the campsite at Long Beach, and do lots of projects and work with the wider community and the primary school at Inverie as well. And over the years, the income sources for ranger work it's kind of moved from a model that was more reliant on grant funding to one where now grant funding makes up about 20% of the income. The other sources it's about 40% comes from the campsite, about 30% from the tours that are offered, and about 10% from bike hire. So it's been a diversification of those income streams and gradually reducing reliance on funding. So the next area I'm going to talk about is the woodlands. So there's the woodland resource is managed by the Knoydart Forest Trust, and I guess there's broadly 2 sides to this. There's managing the plantation woodlands at Inverie, and then there's working on woodland creation projects across the wider estate. And a lot of the ethos here is trying to develop and maximise ways to add value to the local timber resource. So there's kind of broadly 3 main activities here. So there's local timber sales, processed firewood, these big pallets of brings in about £30,000 a year. About 3/4 of that remains in the community, and then about 25% is exported to Mallaig and sold on the pier there. And then the other side is milled timber for building projects. So it tends to be primarily cladding and those sorts of things, and that brings in about 10 to 15,000 a year, depending on the sort of range and scale of building projects underway. The Forest Trust also does sort of contracting and consultancy work for neighbouring landowners in terms of bringing forward woodland creation projects, and then managing the delivery of those projects, and the surplus is then donated back into to the Forest Trust. And over the last 10 years, that's been about £100,000 has been donated back into the Forest Trust to allow ongoing management and paying staff and developing the business. So it's very much about local employment, providing a local service, and helping to develop, all part of developing a circular economy. I'm gonna move on to or wrap up with sort of kind of key learnings. What are the sort of the lessons, or what do I see have been the kind of the ingredients of success, if you like, over the last 25 years? And I think the first thing to say is that none of this has happened overnight. It's been a lot of work by a lot of very committed and determined people. Ownership is definitely key. Ownership of the land, it provides that autonomy of decision making, and allows ideas and projects to evolve and develop. But it's more than just that. There's huge skills and knowledge and experience within the community. A lot of that was there previously, but of course it's grown and developed, and new people have come in over the last 25 years, which is just critical to the ongoing survival and success. Securing capital for infrastructure projects can be challenging, and particularly in an environment that we've been experiencing over the last few years of high cost inflation. So the time where you get a funding application, planning application, by the time you actually come to put a spade in the ground, you might be 2 or 3 years down the ground, and 2 or 3 years down the line, and of course your costs have probably gone up 30–40%. So I'm sure that will be an experience that resonates with many people. It's a real challenge, trying to make that grant funding and that capital go as far as possible. Capacity to deliver the work is really key as well. I kind of touched on this a bit earlier with housing, but providing housing and the associated services for the local community is absolutely fundamental for the long-term sustainability of the community and the ability to deliver all of these projects and make the whole thing work. So I will just kind of come to a close here. This is some work we've been doing through the Knoydart Credit Project, which is looking at this specific diagram is looking at a sort of community vision for the next 25 years of land ownership, and sort of taking that kind of circular economy theme and looking at how that can be developed and expanded. And natural capital may or may not play a part of the future. It's something we're grappling with at the moment. It's quite an interesting and fast-moving area, and be subject to more discussion later this morning. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Richard. And some really useful things I thought you pulled out there, particularly about the long-term nature of a lot of this, and that quite often grant regimes don't recognise long-term nature of most of our projects. Being practical, innovative, always thinking outside the box, again, which quite a lot of grants don't really play into, and that mix of income, which is critical. If you're not one of the lucky ones that have got wind turbines, then you've got to think about all these different options. I think the last point you're making about this circular economy as well is really interesting, because that's something we're really focused now on at Egg. If you get a capital grant, you get big chunks of money coming into the community, but it just washes through the community and goes out the other side, and none of it sticks. You end up with an asset, hopefully, not a liability, but it's how we make more of that stick locally, and that is about trying to build up skills in the community. So you've got your electrician and your plumber and your decorator and your builder who can all actually be part of delivering those projects, and it's not just an external contractor. So I think it's something for us all to think about, perhaps share a bit of knowledge on as to how you do that, make sure you really build that circular economy and make sure some of that money sticks. So thanks for that, Richard. Right, I'm now going to pass over to Lauren Brook from Kirkcaldy. Lauren, Brook and Ian Stirton. Lauren, I think you're the development manager there, and Ian is on the board. Lauren's going to do the hard work of presenting, and then Ian's going to do the hard work of answering any questions. So this is a really different project, but again, I think we'll see quite a lot of the same themes emerging. So thanks, Lauren.
Hi everyone. My watch just flashed up to tell me I had a high heart rate, so I apologise if this goes really quickly. I've only done one slide because I was told to keep it simple, and I took that very literally. But there are a few pictures of our activities up there. Yes, I'm Lauren. I'm the Chief Exec of Kirkcaldy, and Ian's our Treasurer. I'm going to talk about our journey towards social enterprise. I will say straight away, I think we're still really at the beginning of it, and we're still learning. I am by no means an expert in social enterprise, but we're trying lots of new things, and some of it's working more than others. So I think we've got a lot of learning that we can share. So Kirkcaldy is a community-led charity in Kirkcaldy and Fife. We work locally to bring people together, take positive action on the climate emergency, and support people through fuel poverty and food insecurity. We deliver a range of projects, skills training and events to achieve the needs and goals of local people. So our main aim is to build resilience as a community and work towards a future where everyone can live better and tread more lightly on the planet. We've been working in Kirkcaldy since 2009. We've now got 45 staff and 120 volunteers, and we've got a town centre community building, a training kitchen, a community garden, an active travel hub. We work across Kirkcaldy, but we also work across Fife with different partners as well. So we're currently working on a number of different projects around climate action, community, energy, food, growing and active travel. We run cooking classes and a community fridge and community meals in our Langspoon kitchen. We offer training and volunteering at our community garden, and we lead the Cosy Kingdom Partnership, which is a Fife-wide home energy advice partnership as well. Our active travel hub promotes walking, cycling and wheeling and houses our community bike shop, the Langtoon Cycles. And we lead Climate Action Fife, which is a major cross-sector 12-partnership tackling climate emergency across Fife. As I say, we've got about 120 volunteers, and we provide a range of placements and training around employability as well. We purchased our community building in 2017, and we moved in 2019, and we've grown a lot over the past few years, and we've been trying to diversify our income and develop social enterprise activities alongside that. Why? Because, as we are all aware, the grant sector and funding sector is getting more difficult, and we wanted to build our financial stability. But we didn't want to become something we're not. We're not a profit-making organisation. We want to make a difference to our community. So we wanted to make sure that we were earning income that supported our mission and not distract from it. We've been trying to diversify our income through attracting different funders, trusts and foundations. I think we had about 30 different funders last year, and they all start and end at different times. And we've been doing a lot of fundraising and sponsorship as well from businesses. But the main thing I'm going to talk about is the social enterprise side of things. So our current social enterprise activities include cooking workshops, kids clubs, accredited training and corporate days in the kitchen, growing workshops and events in the garden, bike repairs, servicing, sales and an e-bike subscription scheme in the bike shop, hire of our event space and kitchens to groups and businesses, including a lot of start-up businesses who might be looking to trial activities. And we have a number of contracts with other organisations to provide start-up support or consultation services to help them get started doing the same sort of activities that we're doing. It's been a journey. It's not always been predictable or glamorous. It's been a lot of trial and error. We've tried a lot of activities that didn't work. A few years ago, we had a waste reuse and repair project for about four or 5 years that was funded. When it ended, we tried to move some of that into social enterprise and do paid sewing classes, and we just found that people weren't willing to pay the amount that would be needed for them to be viable, so we stopped doing that project. We launched our kitchen and all the community food social enterprise activities just before COVID, so that took a massive gap, and then obviously the cost of living crisis. But we've had to become comfortable at trialing things, changing them, and just walking away if it's not working. It's a capacity challenge. Richard mentioned that, but we've had to take some risks and take on extra staff and invest in extra staff to be able to develop the activities. There's the glamour and complicated world of VAT and upscaling your financial systems. We've had to upskill pretty fast and get external help because it's not the same as managing grant budgets. It's running a business. Ian tackles our annual accounts every year, which is he deserves a medal for. But one of the biggest challenges we found was unexpected. It's not financial, it's been emotional. I think everyone who works in the sector would agree it doesn't come naturally to ask people for money, especially if you've been working with supporting communities for a long time. And we found that some staff and volunteers really struggled with that, and it felt like it was betraying our values. So we've done a lot of, invested in a lot of training and building confidence to help them understand that you can support your money, support your community and generate income, that it doesn't have to be either or. A few honest lessons I think we'd share for anyone going down a similar path is start with what you're good at. Our most successful projects have been from things we're already delivering. Start small and build gradually, and don't be afraid to fail. Even the things that have gone wrong have taught us a lot. Stick to your values. It's really easy to get distracted by shiny business opportunities, but our community definitely recognise the things that stick to our purpose and support that. Invest in people. It takes a different mindset, and we've brought in a lot of external business expertise, especially around building confidence and communication. Get lots of help. We had brilliant support from DTAS, the Social Enterprise Academy, Just Enterprise, Business Gateway, who all offer free or affordable advice on this. And talk to your community. We've been really transparent and really honest about why we need to generate income and how it helps the community. we've asked them what they want and what they pay for, and yeah, don't just assume everybody wants to do what you think they want to do. And our community have been we've been pleasantly surprised by how enthusiastic the community have been, and we found that people have been really willing and actually really keen to contribute and feel like they're helping support our activities and services. Yeah, we're still very much at the start of the journey, I think. We don't think social enterprises are ever going to replace grant funding entirely, but it's now a vital part of our blended income model. And yeah, I just say build your team, confidence and skills, and just try stuff and see if it works. What's the worst that can happen?
Brilliant, Lauren. Sorry I didn't say you were the chief exec for Kirkcaldy, which was saying you're only at the start of your journey. What an immense amount you've already done and achieved, and I think that's the understatement of the year. It's not always glamorous. It's never glamorous. So thank you very much for that, Lauren. And it's definitely worth having a look at what Kirkcaldy are doing in more detail on your website, because there's some brilliant stuff which I'm sure others could learn from. So have we got any questions? We've got sort of 10 minutes or so. Questions from the audience about what has been happening in these two organisations? Yes, Ariane.
And can you just say who you are and where you're from? Morning. Ariane Burgess, MSP for the Highlands region. I actually live in Murray. I've got a question for Greener Kirkcaldy. Very impressive start. You talked about how you attempted some things and you kind of had to shelve and walk away from them. I wonder if you got to a point where you think maybe you could bring them back on at another point because the context changes, your community's getting greener and they're thinking there's more demand. Have you got to that point where you're beginning able to bring something back online, or you're beginning to think, oh, actually that one that didn't work a while ago, we could bring it back now?
Aye, thanks for that. Yes, the answer is we can go back a little bit. I mean, when one of the first things we did, we had a gardening project, and we wanted to build a food hub beside the gardening project. As a part of the process of going through Scottish Land Fund, we did a huge consultation with people. They told us they didn't want it there. They wanted it beside the bus station. So we bought a building beside the bus station. So we're also now again looking at what we can do in a garden project. We've got a lovely building up there, but there's huge potential there, and there's other partners now involved with that project. Unfortunately, the buildings that were there have now collapsed. So we're talking about maybe £2 or £3 million to start that. But we're taking a helping hand to the other projects that are going to go in there. So, you know, a long time ago we had a dream of building there, and now we might be going back there. That's one of the things we've tried. Certainly some of the reuse project we had, we had an organisational place we were asking folk to bring clothes in and swap them, which didn't go down too well, because we ended up with a situation where lots of folk brought clothes to us, but nobody took any away. We ended up bagging them up, taking them to the charity shop ourselves. So I don't think we'll go back to that one. The food side, it's taken a while to take off. We hope for the commercial kitchen to be used quite regularly by startups. That's been a slow burner, but it is working now. We have a Just Eat person, had it 2 or 3 days a week, and delivers food for our kitchen at night. You know, so that's one thing. I hope, from my point of view, we can make some more money out, because it's, you know, a lot of people have small businesses, they start in their kitchen, but because of environmental health inspections, they don't have the equipment and they don't have the sort of stainless steel works and stuff. So that's another area we're hoping to focus more on and try and get a let out 5 days a week or something, you know. So yeah, we have failed on a couple of occasions, but we don't forget about it.
I'll just add, I mentioned the sewing classes. That's definitely something that we're looking at again, because when we're doing community consultations, it's coming up constantly that people want to see it. I think it was a mix of the fact that it came straight off the back of a grant funded project and people were used to getting classes for free.
That was why we really struggled to transition it straight away, but it's been quite a big gap now, and there's different people involved, and I think it could work better this time.
Thanks both for that. Any other questions? Yeah, Ross, thank you.
I'm just interested if you see advantages in revenue streams that are community owned, not just for being able to provide benefit to the communities, but actually, is there greater demand or greater value in the projects and what customers will pay for them because they're community owned?
Yeah, so that's about sort of premium.
That you can attach to a product if it's community owned.
Maybe answer that a different way. Recently, we ran a study which was social return on investment, because we recognised that most community organisations, we were always quite good at saying, for every pound we put in, we've managed to generate £3 income for some of that on fuel efficiency and things like that. But we were never very good, and most organisations aren't about what did it deliver to the community. You know, folk living in a warm home stop going to the doctors. They feel better. They're in a better mood. You know, so there's social return on investment, and the return on investment we had was about £30 for every pound. £34. I'm getting corrected here. For every pound we invested, and I think most organisations, you don't actually think about what your community's benefiting out of what you're doing. I mean, as an accountant, it's easy to count numbers, but how do folk feel? What happens to them? Where's their journey begin? What have you saved them from doing something else on? So that was a huge shock to us about what we were doing. But it was worth the investment to try and find out, also provide our funders with, you know, you give us some cash and we've actually done something with it. We've improved folks' lives.
Richard, is there anything you want to say there from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think my gut feeling is the answer is yes, that we've got any sort of particular empirical evidence to prove it one or the other. But I guess it's partly about, I don't necessarily know about a premium, but I think it helps in the general marketing and, you know, attracting people. And I suppose also looking at it in terms of like you know, it's a crowded marketplace, you know, lots of, you know, whether it's visitor attractions or accommodation options. I don't mean, you know, specifically on Knoydart, but more generally across the Highlands as a whole. One would like to think that, you know, that people, you know, consumers would be more drawn towards you know, community-run initiatives because they can, you know, hopefully they can appreciate the wider benefits that provides. So I think maybe another way to look at it is actually the range of services and experiences offered, you know, looking at Knoydart is way greater than a lot of other places, and that's partly because of all the community activity and initiatives. So it's almost you know, one thing kind of fuels the other, as it were. So it can become a sort of virtuous cycle. So I think that in itself will attract people because there's you know in terms of visitors, there's accommodation. There's you know, I didn't mention the community-owned pub, for example, but you know, there's places to eat and drink and products to buy and experiences to be enjoyed that are all part of the sort of the community ownership story, if you like.
Thanks for that, Richard. And sorry, Karen, I'm going to put you on the spot now. You're going to hate me for this. So, Karen Tobin from Scotto, the Scottish Community-Owned Tourism Network. I think that's a really big factor of the members of your network, isn't it? It's about being able to demonstrate what that premium is around community ownership of tourism, but also that wider sort of ecosystem approach. You can take a whole community approach to tourism, but you're the expert, so I'll let you say.
Yeah. And so I suppose the one thing I would say is the market. You need to bring community there. You know, like Russell Mason, who's our chair, who does the drop at the Loch Ness Hub and travel, and he's found that he's had to be really bold about this is community run, and the driver of a minibus holding the door open for everyone to go to the toilets that you each pay is not working for the community. It's that kind of thing. So what I would say, Ailsa, is I think there's the marketplace needing to be educated on when communities are running something. They're not just doing it out the goodness of their heart, they're doing it to keep their community alive, to keep the community working. So there's that side of it. I think the ecosystem thing is another big thing we get pushed back on from the tourism industry, that a volunteer for a job's worth doing it should be paid for, and there's not recognition that volunteering is something people do in their community because of their passion for their community. And if there's then income coming in through the service that benefits the community, it's not about the individual being paid, it's about the community benefiting. So maybe two perspectives on that are worth considering.
Yeah, I think the fact that volunteers are prepared to commit their time, to say, then generates income, which then allows us to invest in other services, which actually makes the overall visitor experience better. And that's part of the story that we're perhaps not getting across strongly enough. So thank you. Sorry for putting you on the spot there, Cam. But yeah, no, go.
That's a really good point, and we've been doing a lot of work this year about showing the full cost recovery of our activities and why we're charging a certain amount, and we've been really transparent about it, and we found that actually the community have been really receptive to it, and don't realise how much it actually costs to put on services, and that's made a massive difference to our communication and marketing, is that people have responded really well to that.
That's a good point to end on. I think when we're talking about income and how we make these organisations work, it's people understanding what the costs of delivering, which is of course why so many public services are being withdrawn, because they're so expensive. Anyway, that's a bit of a sad note to end on, but thank you very much to our panel for their insights today. Thank you.
Okay, folks, thank you very much to everyone from that. Absolutely interesting. I think we would all have heard echoes of things that we recognise, plus some very good new ideas from our speakers there. Thank you all very much. And following on in that vein, the newest strand of work that we have at Community Land Scotland is about making the best of natural capital for those who live in these communities. So without further ado, Sally, can I invite you to say a few words, and then we'll join with Ross, who works alongside Sally, and we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers.
Wel, nad i'n fag am holdinge. Mi ydol brin mi ein y project Urras agus chafi sio fadr idge, hafis ac gyfelsi fadr Woodbug ski in the rast. So, morning everyone. I'm here to share a short introduction to our new project. I will keep it short because I know this slot is not when people are feeling at their freshest. But I will really enjoyed those earlier talks, and I will say to Lauren that I've never seen my watch tell me before that you're stressed, it's time to breathe. But it did that as just a minute ago. So. I recently started with Community Land Scotland in this new role as manager of the Natural Capital Community Partnerships Project. And Community Land Scotland is an organisation that I'm not going to say I grew up with it, because I'm too old to say that, but I feel that my career has grown up with it. So it's an absolute privilege to be standing here with you today as part of the team. And this project will be supporting on-the-ground delivery of the Scottish Government Natural Capital Market Framework, which supports responsible, values-led investment in natural capital and sets an expectation that investment in natural capital benefits local communities. And this project grew from many discussions and conversations over years, and organisations coming and working together to formalise a vision of what was required. And this grows on how Josh described yesterday, that Community Land Scotland, when there's an important topic, is starting to align with other organisations and come together to create things. And the project really grew from that awareness that with growth in investment in natural capital, there was a need to ensure that communities are meaningfully engaged and that they receive an equitable share of the benefits. And we all know that the best way to ensure meaningful engagement is to form meaningful partnerships, and that is the aim of this project. Now, it's very, very early days. I have been in the role a little over 10 weeks, but I'm going to share with you a bit of our journey so far. try to. There we go. The project was officially launched in Stow in late April. The small event was held in Stow Station House, and the reason we chose that is because it has recently been refurbished by one of Community Land Scotland's members, so it was really important to us to launch in a member building where we could. It was an absolutely fantastic venue, and if any of you are in that part of the country, please pay it a visit because it's well worth a visit. It's also important for us to have launched in the south of Scotland because it is designated as Scotland's Natural Capital Innovation Zone. And I was looking last night at the reasons that the south of Scotland was designated as that Natural Capital Innovation Zone, and that was because it is perfectly positioned to drive change in this sector, and that's partly because of their vast natural capital assets, but it's also because of the strong partnerships that exist, and that is yet another reason why we are trying to build on this. So what are we all about? I have been asked more than once, and possibly more than once by some of the same people, what will you actually be doing in your new job? What does it actually mean? So the purpose of our project is to assist in forming partnerships between landowners, developers, finance partners where appropriate, and communities. And we know that every situation is different, but we believe that meaningful partnerships can produce a win-win situation for all parties. And I'm not standing here today with any illusions that this is an easy task, or telling you that we have all the answers, because we don't. However, I strongly believe that many of the parties involved in natural capital projects share the same goals of helping to tackle Scotland's climate and biodiversity crisis in partnership with building resilient, strong communities. But those same parties don't always know how to reach out and find that common ground or start that journey of building shared goals and, most importantly, shared trust. Our team will be formed of advisors who will work on the ground to support landowners, developers and communities to build these partnerships, and the outcome will always be different in terms of the benefits for nature and the benefits for the communities. But we know each one will be a learning journey, and it will allow us to test and refine our toolkit of resources, and we'll be building up templates, guidance and case studies as we go. And of course, projects like this, none of it is possible without our funders and partners, and of course the team that supports us at Community Land Scotland. And we're really lucky in this project to have a strong mix of funders, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of them. Their input and support has gone far beyond financial, and the mix of knowledge, experience and skills that they've brought to the project has been invaluable to us as a team. And our funders, in addition to our key partners, form a partnership board that meets regularly and provides strategic oversight to the project team. And this shows the level of commitment to this project, and I know the project will be so much stronger as a result of this strong partnership. I had my first meeting of them on Thursday, having arrived here, so we maybe didn't have the perfect time for our first partnership board, but it was a good meeting, so we came into the conference feeling good. In addition to the funders, the project brings in many other key partners, including the Scottish Land Commission and the National Parks. And in particular, we work really closely with Annabel Davidson-Knight, and she couldn't be here with us today, but she's employed by the Scottish Land Commission and works across the Cairngorm National Park area as a community benefits from nature advisor. Our roles are aligned and we work together very, very closely. And together we form what we are calling a network of community benefit advisors. And I really hope to see that network continue to grow and expand over time. Our own Natural Capital Community Partnerships team currently includes 2 people, myself and Ross Wilson. He joined as the first advisor, and he has a strong forestry and project management background, and he will be providing a particular focus on finance within the sector to help us understand it. I joined the team in March and will be managing the project across Scotland, but I will also be providing advice, especially on projects involving croftland and peatland restoration. We're currently recruiting for our 3rd team member who will cover the south of Scotland. The deadline is closed, but we'll be interviewing for that post next week, and then we'll be adding a further team member in early 2026. So how will we like to work with you? So we will be working with landowners and communities across Scotland. We will be working with all kinds of landowners and all kinds of communities, and we will be looking for strategic projects with different types of restoration and different types of landowners, and out of that we will see different types of partnerships. And we will be providing specific support on a small number of projects, but we will also be developing case studies, both from the projects we are directly supporting, but also we will be sharing information from examples that already exist and other ones which don't exist yet. Over time, we will be creating new resources, and we will be sharing resources such as templates of agreements between communities and landowners. And one resource we will be actively using and road testing will be the Scottish Land Commission's Community Benefits from Natural Capital Route Map, which was developed by Amanda Bryan over the last year and launched in April. Now, all of this will allow us to build and share knowledge and understanding more widely. Now, I want to close by sharing that I think this project is really exciting. There are already on the ground examples of partnerships, including amongst community landowners and many of the members, some of whom may be in the room today. And I'm really looking forward to discovering and learning about the natural capital community partnerships that already exist. What I know for sure today, even though it's early days, is there are not enough of these partnerships in place. There are not enough places where communities have the agency over the decisions to do with natural capital and where they are receiving equitable benefits from it. So I am really excited to get started on helping to build new partnerships and see meaningful results for everyone, especially communities.
Thanks very much, Steve. And I think it's good to see that you didn't manage to share that very simple language that even I understood. And it just makes me curious, what is the project about and what are you doing? So given us, we've been slightly around the sandcast. We'll come to you for a question. Maybe just share with us in the time that you've been in the role, what kind of challenges you see kind of appearing in front of you when you do this?
Thanks. And the biggest one, I think, is the fact that it's a new market. It makes it exciting and there's opportunities, but it's just so nascent, and I think there's some really good guidance that's come out. But it's also largely a voluntary market. If you're talking about woodland carbon credits and peatland credits, there's not a given that who the customers are. And when you start looking at investments in traditional industries like forestry or renewables, the streams of revenue is very little. And we really are seeing that with the main loss of capital in the UK, which is pension funds and insurance companies. That's not something they're getting into just now because there's uncertainty. There was just something 2 days ago that Rennie House has closed their most recent forestry fund for a £375 million deal. And I don't think there'll be that many community benefits that come from that. Could be wrong, we'd love to be wrong about it. But with that capital, because it's new, it actually, I think there's really good opportunities for communities, especially community landowners, to come involved. Although the major cost of capital is by an early stage, we are seeing things, there's always still progress. That's something that can possibly be accelerated as well. The strategic scheme looks to adopt offsets as part of the process a little bit earlier. And I think, like, building on my question, we're thinking for economists who are interested in that capital as part of their ESG strategy. The idea that communities benefit from that is really important. And whether it's to add value into carbon credits, but ideally to make it as a given that there needs to be significant benefits. Natural capital for communities, we'd love to see that become much more established. And I think it's one of the key challenges people say, why are you bringing things for these community benefits? It's not something that you'd be asking for planting or farming or other things. use is necessary, but because it's new, it also gives a real opportunity to keep it by specific examples of this.
Thanks very much. So do you want to pick up on that? I mean, no. Well, I finance your loss free. Yes, that was a long trip. I'm conscious of about 10 minutes for the rest of this. Hello. Yeah. We've got 10 minutes for some questions. I do have questions, but I see an hand up here. Maybe Grant, and then John will come round in front. Steve Barlow, Nature Something Action. I guess it's something to try and explore a bit with you by the sort of non-financial or non-economic benefits coming from natural capital projects, obviously providing a huge range of benefits that isn't sort of hard cash coming into a community. And I guess, how do you reckon, to what extent do you recognise that, and how do you then measure that?
Thank you. So that's something that this Land Commission Agreement recognises, and it's something that we will very much be recognising. And interestingly, with some of the case studies that Amanda and looked at with Ghabhsainn, actually the community said the money is not the important, the engagement is the important, the agency is the important, and achieving the benefits that the community wanted is important. So for us, it's completely holistic. The benefits don't need to be upfront. They need to be about what the community wants. And the benefit of that is transparency, but also working together from the early stage to make sure that we're designing these benefits through the product. And we do business on margin field, and I'm not sure how many examples we can see after our community, a finance partner, very important. Yeah, it's market we achieving that at the moment. So we need to be really innovative, and we need to just innovative approaches. And some way always be community projects.
Here's the microphone.
So I'm delighted to. Honestly, you're doing this because you don't want to miss the boat, miss the train, as it were. And to what extent are you aware that this whole thing just collapsed and really planned? Do what's story because it's a voluntary, a voluntarist. It's not like forestry, it's not anything else. It's entirely voluntary. It all depends on you, on the purpose of international capital.
Yeah, I'm very that it's a risky project, and there's no guarantee of what those markets will do. I think there are some areas that there's genuine opportunities right now. So on the more compliance side, the transmission operators have significant pot of money tied into community benefits and nature restoration projects from the work that they're doing to increase transmission for renewables. In terms of practical things, I think there are areas and opportunities within the licensing this project, but long term, like fully aware that it's risky. It also what makes it exciting and opportunities for us.
Thank you. And I'm really sharing with you the risk register for this project, which makes some pretty interesting reading. But I think it's absolutely evident to Community Land Scotland, their partners and their funders have a vision to do this. And built into that aspect if other ways we can be useful with that, if it doesn't collapse completely, we're still going to be useful. We're still going to be trying to community-led nature projects and making sure that in those scenarios the community are getting the legacy projects.
We have some in the middle. Josh, thanks.
I don't just sort of a little bit of I used to point there. There's already a lot of commitment in, for example, big infrastructure projects on that or communities You see the project design the role as acting as an advocate for communities to make sure that these are delivered, because we often find is that developers promise a lot, and then once the project's finished, you know, you can't see them for dust. And certainly in my community, we're looking at pushing communities to get this benefit to stick within the community, as I also mentioned earlier, of them employing, you know, finding funding for rangers or environmental specialists living and based in the community. So the development of apparently being remote contractors, looking at the number of birds in the hemisphere, and once to this also. So there's a lot of advocacy there, I think, about communities to bring these benefits to people and to make them understand, you know, what these commitments are and dollars actually need. And I think it's a big goal potentially to use that as a watchdog or as an advocate, whatever, you know, that people.
Thank you, and it's a great question. Actually, and I think it's based on learning from those experiences, potentially ultimate those experiences of community benefit funds, but not a meaningful work that have provided the community with that say and design at the early stages. And one thing that we will be advocating for is written agreements with community land, which is in use in its great purpose. And so yeah, we do definitely see a role in that. As well, we haven't got to the monitoring stage yet in research to get design, but it's the roadmap. And in addition to that, I think there is a role for this project. We've been working very closely with the social team and with Ronnie, because it's not just about we are seeing the ground, it's taking that learning, what barriers, and that can be policy, there can be sector, it's taking that learning and feeding it up to the trying to make sure we feed it at the right points with that information.
Okay, we have a last question. Second back row there, Josh. Hi there, I'm Eva Schoenbein from Grassroots Club. It's a bit of a meta question. And from what I can hear, this project is is at least partly defensive in terms of seeing what's kind of playing out in the wider picture and trying to make sure that community interests are protected and promoted within that. But I can't be the only person in the room who feels very uncomfortable with the language of natural capital. And I think a lot of us who live in communities aren't looking at the land around us and thinking capital, we're thinking environment, home, this is part of me, this is part of where I live. And I just wonder if the issue of how we language our relationship with our environment is also being taken into account by Community Land Scotland. So we're not just jumping on a bandwagon that we may in some ways quite dislike, but see as important to act with. But are we also creating narratives or reinforcing narratives that are more in line with the values of people who live in communities, who live in environments?
Yeah, so I think that I think so. I think it's so important because whether it's an opportunity for communities really comes down to how they feel about it. And some of these projects are going ahead and have nothing to do with communities just now. You know, there's been some terrible examples that companies have made natural capital investments and then been slated in the press and they've been disasters, specifically because they've not spoken to communities. And I think all these projects will benefit from a longer engagement with the people that actually live and work on the land, because so much of it's about natural capital that comes from people who don't live in the places where these projects are, and it's so important. I think that conversation expands a lot more and goes a lot bigger than myself so far.
Yeah, just say thanks for the question. It's really important. And interestingly, we have already started in terms talking about the language we're using, making sure we're getting that right, and we're comfortable with it, and learning from feedback from communities. We actually have already had that kind of request for help, and that's a really difficult conversation to have with communities. And actually allowing me just exploring that as communities, and we might actually be at a more earlier stage. Don't you think?
Thank you very much, everyone. And if you think it's hard to speak and find a language that's community in English, it's even harder to get. Because when we talk about these in these terms, and silence, Ross will learn very quickly. But if you're not thinking with capitalism,
Sign me up.
sign you up. Okay, please thank Sally and right, we're not going ahead and pursue these workshops, so am I right in guiding people? Not right yet. You know where you're going, I hope, and if not, it's back the Orange lanyards. See you back from